First story. I booked a vacation, and my delusional fiancé thought he would bring his kids on the trip too. I canceled the trip and demanded he repay my money. He did. So I told his kids that their mother's injury is karma, and to stop effing up my life to set boundaries. Now I'm regretting my actions. I 36F have been with my fiancé 41M for 3 years. He's divorced and has 2 kids with his ex-wife, an 11-year-old daughter, and a 7-year-old son. He shares custody with his ex. We live together, and the kids come over on a set schedule, mostly every other weekend and sometimes for a midweek dinner. It's not a surprise drop-in kind of thing, at least. It wasn't supposed to be. I knew when I started dating him that he was a dad. That's not what this post is about. I didn't go in blind. But I had expectations, and maybe that was my mistake. I expected that a man with kids who is also entering a serious relationship would understand how to balance both parts of his life. Not just be dad, but also a committed partner. I don't love being around his kids. I don't hate them. I've always been polite, even friendly. But I'm not one of those people who just melts around children, especially not kids I didn't raise. They're not badly behaved exactly, but they're not easy either. His son is high energy and constantly knocking things over, and his daughter is quiet but very clingy with her dad, like full-on sit on his lap at 11 clingy. I've kept the peace for his sake, but I won't pretend I've bonded with them. If I'm being totally honest, I don't want to be their stepmom. I want to be his partner. And it's not like I haven't tried. I've invited them to stuff and tried to include them in things like movie nights and baking days. But it always felt like he defaulted into dad mode the second they arrived, and I became invisible. That started bothering me more over time. There have been little signs along the way that our priorities don't align. Like last year, on my birthday, he forgot dinner plans because his ex asked if he could take the kids for a couple of hours. She had some last-minute thing. He said yes, and I ended up blowing out candles with 2 kids who were half asleep and a boyfriend who looked exhausted. He apologized, but I saw where I ranked. Plans with me seem conditional, like if everything else goes smoothly, then we're on. I started to feel like a placeholder for the times he's not on dad duty. So fast forward to this vacation. I planned a 3-day resort trip. I paid for everything. I booked the dates after checking multiple times with him. I even made sure we weren't in his custody this week. He gave me the go-ahead. I did all the legwork, reservations, activities, organizing time off. It felt like something special for us to recharge. We haven't had time alone in a long while. I wanted to feel like a couple again, not just the woman who shares his house when it's not full of kids. Then, 2 days before we're supposed to leave, his ex calls. She apparently had an accident, broke her leg, and couldn't take the kids that weekend. So what does he do? Immediately says yes, he'll take them. Just like that. No call to me, no conversation. I come home, and there they are, sitting on the couch watching TV. My stomach just dropped. I asked him what was going on, and he casually said, "Oh, ex's name had an accident and broke her leg. I'm taking the kids this weekend." No warning. No heads up. Just that. 2 days before we were supposed to leave. I asked him if he forgot we had a vacation booked. He goes, "No, I didn't forget. I figured we could just bring the kids with us or move the trip to next weekend." I told him this wasn't just a casual day trip. It was a weekend I planned, paid for, and looked forward to for weeks. I had asked him multiple times if he was free, and he swore there was nothing to worry about. And now, with zero discussion, he was acting like the entire thing was flexible, like it was just a placeholder. He looked surprised that I was upset. He said, "What did you expect me to do? Say no to my kids when their mom's injured?" That wasn't the point. It's not about not helping his kids. It's about him making a major decision that directly affects me without even thinking to involve me. It's about how easy it is for him to cancel our time together, like it means nothing. It's about the complete lack of consideration. I said, "You didn't even ask me. You just assumed I'd be fine with it, like always." What if I said, "My sister's sick. She's crashing here all weekend. Would that be fine with you 2 days before vacation?" He said it's not the same because they're his kids. But again, he missed the point. I'm not competing with his kids. I'm pointing out that I'm treated like I'm always on standby. Our plans are only good if nothing else comes up. He kept pushing the idea that we could just take them with us. I said absolutely not. This wasn't a family trip. It was a couple's getaway. I didn't spend all this money to play babysitter or sit through sibling arguments for 3 days. And frankly, I don't enjoy being around them for extended periods. I've kept that to myself for a long time, but I snapped and said it. That hit a nerve. He accused me of not accepting his whole package and said he should have seen the signs earlier. I said he doesn't get to pull that card when I've bent over backwards pretending I'm okay with the dynamic, just to keep the peace. I never signed up to be a stepmom. I signed up to be in a relationship. I respected his role as a father, but I'm not interested in being the default backup plan when his ex can't handle her schedule. He called me selfish. Said I cared more about a hotel booking than his kids needing a place to stay. That was the final straw for me. I packed a bag and went to stay at my friend's place. It's been 3 days. He's still mad and keeps texting things like, "I can't believe you think this is how parenting works," and "You're judging me for showing up for my kids." He thinks I'm heartless and inflexible. I think he's spineless and inconsiderate. I haven't replied much, because honestly, I don't know what to say. I'm pissed. I feel completely sidelined. And maybe I am judging him not for being a parent, but for being a partner who folds the second his ex calls. And yeah, maybe I'm not cut out for this. I've been trying to convince myself that I could eventually grow into this role, that we'd find a rhythm. But moments like this remind me that this will always be how it goes. Anytime I think we're finally building something as a couple, something happens, and I get pushed off the ledge. He says I ruined the vacation with my reaction. But to me, he ruined it the second he took in the kids without talking to me. And I'm tired of being the one who always has to be understanding, while he gets to make the calls. So, Reddit Ada. Comments. Comment 1. YTA. Full stop. He's a parent first. That's not a slogan. That's the deal. If you don't like that, don't date men with kids. There's no loophole where you get the fun adult relationship version of a dad, and then complain when the actual parenting shows up. I'm engaged to a woman with joint custody. If her ex called tomorrow and said he broke his leg and needed help, I wouldn't be sulking about a weekend away. I'd be packing bags and asking the kids what snacks they want for the car ride. An extra weekend. A chance to take them on vacation. That's not a burden. That's part of the package. You keep talking like you tolerated his kids as a favor to him. That mindset alone tells me you're not cut out for this. Kids aren't obstacles you endure to get to the relationship prize. They're the core. No exceptions. Comment 2. YTA. Massively. His ex didn't break her leg out of spite to sabotage your resort plans. Life happens. And when it does, parents step up. That's the job. I'm divorced with 2 kids. We have a strict week on/week off schedule. Last month my ex ended up in the hospital unexpectedly, and we had to take our son for several extra weeks. You know what my husband did? He didn't whine about canceled plans or ask what we were losing. He prayed for my ex at dinner, checked in with my kid, and adjusted without complaint. Because that's what being with a parent looks like. I get being disappointed. But your reaction wasn't disappointment. It was anger at him for choosing his kids when they needed him. Ask yourself this honestly. If those were your kids, is that how you'd want him to handle it? Or would you expect him to say, "Sorry about the trip," and show up anyway? Kids come before vacations, before sleep, before money, before your partner's feelings sometimes. That doesn't make him a bad fiancé. It makes him a good father. And if you can't live with that, this relationship is already on borrowed time. Comment 3. YTA. Look, I get that you wanted alone time with your partner, and it sucks to lose a vacation. But this wasn't some whim his ex broke her damn leg. What was he supposed to do? Say, "Sorry, can't help you. My girlfriend planned a spa weekend." The fact that you got angry the second you saw his kids, and didn't even try to ask what happened before blowing up tells me all I need to know. You want a partner who's a father sometimes, and your boyfriend is a father always. You keep saying you respect that he's a parent, but your behavior screams the opposite. And what's worse is you've been pretending this whole time you admit you never bonded with his kids, never liked being around them, and saw them as interference. That's cruel. They're children, not detours. He deserves someone who actually gives a SHT about the full reality of his life. Not someone who pouts when plans change due to an emergency. Grow up. Update. I read the comments on my original post. I didn't agree with a lot of them, but I can admit now that some of you weren't wrong about one thing. I underestimated what living with kids full-time, even temporarily, would actually feel like for me. I went back home after staying with my friend for a few days. By then, it was clear the kids weren't just there for the weekend anymore. His ex's recovery was going slower than expected, and he told me they'd likely be staying a bit longer. He didn't define what that meant. A week, 2. I didn't push, mostly because every time I tried to talk, he shut down. The house felt completely different. Not hostile, but tense and crowded. The kids weren't doing anything terrible, but they were everywhere. Loud in the mornings, constantly asking their dad for things. Watching TV in the living room all evening. My routines were gone. I started eating in the bedroom just to have some quiet. My fiancé was polite, but distant. We didn't argue, but we didn't talk either. He barely looked at me. Any attempt I made to revisit the vacation situation was met with, "I don't want to do this right now." I kept thinking we were both waiting for the other to crack. Then he sent me the money for the vacation. No conversation. No apology. Just a Venmo notification with the note, "Reimbursing you for the trip." That hurt more than losing the vacation itself. It felt like he was closing a tab, not addressing a problem. Like, "Here's your money, end of discussion." I told him that sending money didn't fix the fact that I felt dismissed. He said, "I didn't ruin anything. Life happened." After that, things went downhill fast. A few days later, I was on the phone with a friend in the kitchen, venting quietly. I thought the kids were upstairs. They weren't. His daughter was standing halfway down the hallway and clearly heard me say that I never agreed to live like this, and that everything in my life felt hijacked. She didn't say anything. She just walked away. That night, my fiancé confronted me. He was angry in a way I hadn't seen before. He said his daughter told him she felt like she wasn't wanted in our home. I tried to explain that I wasn't talking to her, that I was frustrated and venting, but the damage was already done. From that point on, the kids were noticeably different around me. Quiet. Avoidant. His son asked me once if they were the reason the trip got canceled. I said no, but the question alone made me feel sick. Then came the shouting match. It started over something small. The kids were arguing loudly in the living room while I was trying to work from home. I asked them to lower their voices. They didn't. I asked again. They ignored me and looked at their dad, who was on his phone and didn't intervene. I snapped and told him he needed to actually parent instead of pretending I wasn't there. That set him off. He told me to stop taking my frustration out on the kids. I told him I wouldn't have to if he'd ever set boundaries. Voices were raised. The kids were right there. And then I lost control. I said things I shouldn't have said. I mocked the situation with their mother. I said something along the lines of, "Funny how she's suddenly helpless now," and called it karma in the heat of the moment. I didn't threaten anyone or insult the kids directly, but I talked about their mom in a way I never would have under normal circumstances. I'm not proud of it. I've never talked about a sick or injured person like that in my life. My fiancé immediately cut me off. He stepped between me and the kids and told them to go upstairs. His voice was calm, but his face wasn't. After they were gone, he told me to stop talking. Just stop. He said I crossed a line that couldn't be uncrossed. That night, he told me something I'd suspected, but hadn't heard out loud. He said he doesn't think I'm capable of being with someone who has children. He said I keep framing it as not wanting to be a stepmom, but to him that means not wanting his life. He said he needs a partner who doesn't see his kids as an inconvenience to be tolerated. I didn't argue. I didn't have anything left to say. The next day, I packed a bag and went back to my friend's place. He didn't stop me. He didn't ask me to stay. We haven't officially broken up, but we're barely speaking. When we do, it's short and logistical. I keep replaying everything in my head. The lost vacation. The money. The weeks of tension. The way I snapped. I know I handled things badly. I also know that I was slowly unraveling in a situation I never wanted but felt trapped in. I tried to convince myself I could adapt. I couldn't. I don't hate his kids. But I also don't think I can live a life where I'm always second, always flexible, and always expected to swallow my feelings because that's what parenting is. Maybe that makes me selfish. Maybe it just makes me incompatible with him. Right now, I don't know if there's a way back from this or if there should be one. I feel embarrassed, guilty, and still angry all at once. I lost a vacation, a lot of money, and possibly my relationship. But I also lost control of myself, and that's the part that scares me the most. Comments. Comment 1. Jesus. I was with a guy who had 2 kids from a previous marriage. I tried my best, but I never wanted to be a stepmom, I just loved him. And that wasn't enough. Eventually, that truth leaks out, just like it did here. You didn't just lose control, OP. You said out loud what you really felt about the kids, about their mom, about your place in all this. That wasn't someone time-lapsed. That was the mask slipping, and the kids heard it. It's over, even if you haven't admitted it to yourself yet. Your fiancé isn't wrong to want someone who embraces the full package. You want a relationship that doesn't include all the complications of someone else's past. And I get that, but you don't get to shame that past when it shows up unannounced. That's part of the deal. It sucks. But it's real. You're not arsehole, but you are in the wrong relationship. And now you've hurt 2 kids and a man who was trying to do right by everyone. There's no clean way back from that. Comment 2. As someone who grew up with a stepmom who made it clear, we were just background noise, this hit me hard. You think kids don't notice when they're resented? We notice everything. The sighs. The fake smiles. The way you look at your phone when we talk. I promise you, your fiancé's daughter will remember hearing you trash her mom while she was injured. That stuff carves into you. Even if she doesn't say anything, that moment will shape how safe she feels in any house her dad brings her to. You shouldn't be with a parent. That's not a drag, it's just real. You had your breaking point and crossed it loud and clear. The good news is it's out. No more pretending. Walk away and let them find someone who's built for this life. You aren't. Comment 3. I'll probably get downvoted, but I don't think you're an arsehole. I think you were drowning and cracked under pressure. Doesn't excuse what you said, it was effing awful. But I've been with someone whose boundaries and identity slowly disappeared under the weight of someone else's life. You snapped because you've been invisible in your own home for a long time. That said, your fiancé wasn't the bad partner here either. He's just a parent doing what he's supposed to do when emergencies hit. The fact that he didn't loop you in before taking the kids, that's bad communication. But the second you made it about how his ex's injury inconvenienced you, there was no walking that back. It's not just about compatibility, it's about honesty. You weren't honest with yourself or him about how much resentment you were holding on to. Now you're both sitting in the fallout. Time to stop pretending this relationship is salvageable. You both deserve something that fits better. Update. I didn't post again right away because I genuinely thought there might still be a way to salvage this. After everything that happened, I knew I couldn't undo the things I said. But I also didn't want to burn an entire relationship down over what started as a breakdown in communication and spiraled into something ugly. I took a few days to cool off at my friend's place. I stopped rehashing the argument in my head and focused on what I actually wanted. Not what made me look better or worse, but what I could realistically live with. I realized something uncomfortable. I still loved him. I didn't love the life. I didn't love the chaos or the constant feeling of being an afterthought. But I loved him. And I didn't want the relationship to end with shouting, bitterness, and kids thinking I was some evil stepmom who hated them. So I reached out. I texted him asking if we could talk in person. I made it clear I wasn't looking to argue. I just wanted to apologize for what I said and see where we stood. He agreed, but he said up front it wouldn't be a long conversation. Before that meeting even happened, things got messier. My family got involved. I made the mistake of venting to my mother and brother. I didn't ask them to intervene, but they took it upon themselves to defend me. My brother sent my fiancé a long message about how I'd been disrespected, how he let his ex control our lives, and how I deserved better. My mom followed up with a passive-aggressive text about how marriage requires compromise from both sides. I was mortified when I found out. I apologized to him immediately and told my family to stay out of it. The damage was already done. When we met, he told me flat out that involving my family crossed another boundary. He said it made him feel ganged up on for doing what he believes is basic parenting. That conversation was calm but heavy. I apologized for what I said about his ex. I didn't try to justify it. I told him it came from anger and resentment that had been building for a long time, and that it wasn't who I wanted to be. I also apologized for how the kids overheard things they shouldn't have. Then I asked if I could apologize to the kids directly. That was a mistake. He said absolutely not. He told me they were still processing what they heard, and that my apology would only reopen something he was trying to help them feel safe from. He said the trust was gone, and that any attempt from me, even a well-meaning one, would feel forced and uncomfortable for them. I wasn't trying to fix things for my own image. I genuinely didn't want 2 kids thinking I hated them or their mom. But I accepted his answer. Then he said the words I knew were coming, but still wasn't ready to hear. He told me he was calling off the engagement. He said he had thought long and hard during the weeks I was gone. And while he believes I didn't mean to hurt his kids, the fact that it happened at all was a deal-breaker. He said he couldn't marry someone who feels this much resentment towards a core part of his life, even if that resentment only comes out under pressure. I asked if there was any chance of rebuilding slowly, maybe with couples counseling, maybe with time. He said no. He said he needed stability for his kids, and uncertainty about whether his partner could coexist with them wasn't something he could risk again. I asked about moving back in temporarily while I figured things out. That's when he told me something else that made everything very final. He didn't want me living there anymore. Not as punishment, but because the house needed to feel safe and consistent for the kids. He said it gently, but it was firm. I left with what I could carry that day. After that, my friend who had been hosting me started getting understandably worn down. She didn't kick me out, but she made it clear that my emotional spiral was bleeding into her space. Hearing someone else reflect my behavior back to me without sugarcoating forced me to confront how stuck I'd become in my own head. Around that time, I ran into someone I used to work with, child-free, single, and easy to talk to. We grabbed coffee. It felt light. No baggage. No schedules. No custody calendars. He asked me out again, and I didn't say yes or no. Because here's the part I didn't expect. I still miss my fiancé. Even after everything. Even knowing it's over. Even knowing it probably should be. I'm not dating anyone. I'm not jumping into anything new. I'm staying with another friend now and figuring out my housing situation. I've stopped framing this as what he did to me and started looking at the bigger picture. I didn't handle things well. But I also don't think I was wrong for realizing too late that this life wasn't for me. I don't regret speaking up about my unhappiness. I regret waiting until it turned into something ugly. I regret hurting kids who didn't ask to be in the middle of any of this. And I regret believing I could outgrow something fundamental about myself just because I loved someone. The engagement is over. The relationship is over. What's left is figuring out who I am without constantly trying to adapt to someone else's life. Comments. Comment 1. Girl, it had to end. You loved the guy, but you hated the life that came with him, and whether you meant to or not, you punished everyone around you for it. The ex, the kids, even your own damn self. I've been in your shoes. Married a man with 2 teenage sons. I thought I could make it work because I loved him. Guess what? Love isn't enough when you're seething every time you hear a Nerf gun or get ignored at dinner. Eventually, it all explodes. But here's what you did right. You stopped blaming everyone else. That takes guts. You're not a monster, you just stayed too long in a life that didn't fit. Your ex was smart to cut it off. Doesn't mean he didn't love you. It means he loved his kids more. And that's the way it should be. Comment 2. As someone who was the kid in this kind of story, I'm glad he chose us. I wish my dad had done the same when my stepmom made it clear we were second class in her house. You're not evil. You didn't slap anyone. But you rattled the foundation. And when you talk about not feeling like the relationship was about you anymore, that's the part that stung. Because that's exactly what being a parent is, letting it not be about you. Even when it's hard. Even when it hurts. You weren't wrong to feel lost. You were wrong to take that out on people who couldn't protect themselves from your fallout. And you figured that out. That's something. Just don't forget it the next time you think about building a life with someone whose heart belongs to someone else before you walk in. Comment 3. What I hear in this post is grief. Not just for the relationship, but for the version of yourself you thought you could grow into. That's the most painful part, realizing your best effort still wasn't enough because it wasn't authentic. I don't think you hated those kids. I think you hated the role you had to play around them. The silent, accommodating adult, always one notch below the real family unit. You thought love would make that dynamic tolerable. But love doesn't override identity. You lost him. But I think you found something more important. Your limit. Don't date that coworker yet. Sit in the space. Understand it. Otherwise, you're just running again. Update. I didn't think things could get worse after the engagement ended. I was wrong. I need to be honest about what I did after, because pretending I was just hurt and healing would be a lie. I spiraled. And I hurt a lot of people in the process, including myself. After the engagement was called off, and I was told I couldn't move back in, I still had things at the house. Not just furniture, but paperwork, clothes, and personal items. I asked to come by and get them. He said we could schedule a time when the kids weren't home. That felt humiliating to me. I took it as being treated like a threat, rather than someone who had lived there. Instead of accepting that boundary, I dragged it out. I said I needed more time. Then I showed up unannounced one afternoon, just to grab essentials. The kids were there. He was furious. He told me to leave immediately. I argued that I still had a right to my things, and that he was overreacting. He said if I didn't leave, he'd call someone to mediate. That should have been my wake-up call. It wasn't. I started telling myself a different story. that I'd been used, that I'd paid for things, rearranged my life, tolerated discomfort, and then got thrown out when I became inconvenient. I repeated that story to friends until it felt true. I also tried to move on too fast. I went on a few dates with the child-free guy I mentioned before. At first, it felt like oxygen. Quiet dinners. No interruptions. Someone asking about my day and actually listening. I leant into it hard. I talked too much about my ex. I framed myself as the wronged party. I said things I now cringe at, like, I gave up everything for someone else's kids. After a few weeks, he pulled away. Eventually, he told me the truth. He felt like I was still angry, not healed, and that dating me felt like stepping into unresolved chaos. He said he didn't want to be a rebound or a reaction. Then he ended things. That rejection sent me over the edge. I started venting publicly. I told people he chose his ex over me. That he never stood up for me. That his kids ran the house. I didn't lie outright, but I twisted things until the narrative favored me. A few friends took my side. Most didn't, and then it flipped. Someone shared screenshots of my online posts with him. He responded privately to a couple of people with facts. Not insults. Facts. Timelines. Messages. Proof that he reimbursed me. Proof that I crossed boundaries after being asked not to. Proof that I showed up when I wasn't welcome. Within days, the tone changed. Invitations stopped. Replies slowed. A friend I'd known for years told me that she couldn't support how I was handling things anymore. Another went no contact without explanation. I told myself they were choosing sides. Looking back, they were choosing distance. I made things worse by contacting the kids directly. I convinced myself that if I could just clear the air, it would help everyone move on. I asked him if I could apologize to them one last time. He said no. I ignored that and sent a message anyway, framed as an apology but loaded with emotion. I told them I never meant to hurt them, but that everything changed when they came to live with us full time. I said their dad and I lost something because of circumstances none of us chose. He found out. He told me never to contact his children again. He said if I did, he would take formal steps to make it stop. After that, I hit rock bottom. One night, after seeing photos of him and the kids at a school event happy, normal, moving on, I drank too much. I drove to the house. I told myself I just wanted closure. I rang the doorbell and refused to leave when he answered. I cried. I accused him of throwing me away. I brought up his ex again. I said cruel things I knew would hurt. The kids were inside. He told me to leave, or he'd call the police. I left before it got that far, but the shame of that moment still makes my chest tighten. I scared people. I became someone I don't recognize. After that, he stopped responding entirely. That's when I tried one last thing, money. I sent him a message listing everything I felt I'd contributed. Time. Emotional labor. Shared expenses. I implied I deserved compensation beyond the refunded vacation. Reading it back now, it sounds unhinged. He didn't respond. A week later, I got a short email from a lawyer telling me to stop contacting him, and that no further financial obligations existed. That was the end. Now I'm here. Alone in a small sublet. No fiancé. No new relationship. Most of my friends are gone or distant. The people who remain don't want to hear about him anymore. They want me to talk about me. And that's the part I've been avoiding. I keep replaying my behavior and realizing how often I chose escalation over restraint. How quickly I turned pain into entitlement. How I kept insisting on being heard while refusing to actually listen to the boundaries being set. I didn't just lose a relationship. I burnt bridges, scared children, embarrassed myself publicly, and alienated people who cared about me. I'm starting therapy next week. I still feel wronged sometimes. I still feel like I lost more than I gained. But I can finally see that the way I responded turned loss into destruction. I don't know what comes next. I just know I can't keep blaming everyone else if I want my life to stabilize again. That's the update. Comments. Comment 1. You went full scorched earth, OP, like, wow. I've seen exes flame out before, but dragging kids, badgering him for money, and showing up drunk. That's not grief, that's unhinged. And before you say, but I was hurting. Yeah, so was he. So were the kids. But they didn't start group chats trashing you or send lawyers after you. You escalated every time you didn't get what you wanted. Glad you're getting therapy. Seriously, you need it. You weren't built for the life you stepped into, and you left emotional shrapnel all over the place on your way out. Be better for the next person. And for yourself. Comment 2. I appreciate the honesty in this post. It's rare. But I need to say this as someone who's been raising kids that aren't biologically mine for years. The second you framed their existence as the thing that ruined your future, it was over. You didn't fail because you didn't bond with them. That happens. It's hard. It's complicated. You failed because you made them the enemy in your story. You wanted to be the partner, the priority, but in a family with kids, the priority isn't either adult. It's the damn kids. That doesn't mean you had no place. It means your place was with them, not despite them. You never made that shift. And when it got hard, you lashed out. I hope you keep digging in therapy, not just to feel better, but to understand how to stop doing harm when you feel hurt. That's the real work. Second story. I refused to give money and promised to send my daughter on the school trip if she saved up money, thinking she wouldn't. But she did by humiliating me, so I canceled her school trip. I took away her money and told her to make time to bond with me. So I 34F and my husband 35M have a daughter, Iris 13F. We are honestly not well off at all and get by with lots of sacrificing and budgeting. Still, we do our best to make sure Iris has all the extras she needs. We buy her art supplies. We pay for her to go out with her friends, etc., etc. All within reason. I am willing to give more details on this if needed. Iris's school does school trips every once in a while. She has one coming up, an overnight trip to our nearby city where they can see the sights and visit historical monuments. Not being specific on purpose. However, it does cost quite a pretty penny. When Iris told me about this and asked for the money, I told her we were very sorry, but we didn't have the money for it. She seemed quite upset, so I told her maybe the three of us could put our heads together and think of a way to raise the money before the deadline for the trip. I was thinking maybe a bake sale or something. Perhaps she could sell some of her art or do commissions. She huffed at me and told me she'd get the money herself and just walked away. Here is where I may have made a mistake. I didn't follow up with her at all. Honestly, it slipped my mind, and I work long days, so it wasn't really a priority, especially since she didn't bring it up again. I guess I just assumed that she'd given up and decided not to go. I did still set aside a small portion from my paychecks, just in case she was working on something, even though I didn't really expect anything. But 2 days ago, she came up to me and told me she had the money. I was shocked and confused and firstly assumed she must have sold some of her things, and I was ready to scold her about not talking to me first. But the reality was worse. I asked her how she got so much money, and it turns out she literally went and begged from everyone she could. Her friends' parents, her art teacher, literal people on the street. She apparently told them we were extremely poor and couldn't pay for her trip, which is not true. We are not in poverty. We keep her as comfortable as we can. She has never had to worry about meals or the heat turning off. She just guilted them all into giving her money. I was appalled and extremely embarrassed and told her that that was completely unacceptable, and she had to give all the money back, and that she was not going to use that money to go on the trip. I wanted to say she couldn't go at all now, even if she got the money in an acceptable way. But my husband said that was a little strong. He fully agrees with me on not using the money she pretty much stole, though. And when she went crying to him about it, he sided with me fully. She started crying and shouted at me that the deadline was a week away and that she couldn't get the money again in just a week. I told her that was really sad, and maybe if she'd made a plan with me weeks ago, then she would have been able to get the money. But for now, she has a week to come up with it. She stormed upstairs to her room and has been sulking since then. So, Ada for telling my daughter she couldn't use the money to fund her trip, even though she came up with it herself. Edit. Since people are missing this, if she had just said we couldn't afford the trip and asked for donations, I would have been okay with it, even if I still don't think our financials should be public knowledge like that. She did lie and guilt people by telling them that we couldn't afford dinner many nights, so she went to bed hungry, and that we couldn't afford new clothes for her, so she often wore the same clothes for years at a time, and that we hadn't paid for any hobbies or extracurriculars. I am not denying we aren't well off, but we are not poverty-stricken like she implied. Of course, the trip isn't denied because she told people we can't afford it. It's denied because she lied to people to get them to give her money. Comments. Commenter 1. YTA. But hey, at least your daughter learned early she can't depend on you, so she won't be blindsided when she turns 18. OP, like I said in another comment, I was willing to work with her since we simply do not have the extra money for it. But I am not going to reward her for guilting and lying to lots of people to get this money. Clearly she has the ethic for it. It should be going into something honest. Commenter 1. She said you're too poor to afford the trip. And you apparently are. Where's the lie? OP, firstly, I don't think our financial situation needs to be broadcasted like that. The fact that we can't afford the trip is not the lie. Second, I mentioned the lying and guilting because that's specifically what she was doing, begging people for money and saying that we never paid for anything for her because we couldn't afford it, and saying she sometimes had to skip dinner and that much of her clothes was donated or years old. None of this is true, and I don't like her saying these things to gain sympathy and money. OP explains more about the school yearly trips and why she didn't start to put some money aside so her daughter could go on the trips. OP, the school doesn't do yearly trips like this. The timings are not always at the same time. Last year they had a trip in April to some aquarium. This year it's overnight to our nearby city. If she had told me about this trip a few months back, I'm sure we could have saved the money for it. Secondly, I don't think she needs to be doing something illegal for me to disapprove. She has been lying about our situation to people in order to gain sympathy and funds, which I am not going to reward. Thirdly, if she gave the money back and told people she lied about wearing only hand-me-downs / not getting to eat dinner, not getting to do anything fun, I doubt they would want her to keep it. If they still told her to keep it, and she still had enough money to go on the trip, I would let her go, but I wouldn't be happy about it. What did OP's daughter lie about? OP, she absolutely did beg. If she had just asked people to donate, I would have been okay with it, even if I would have preferred she raised the money through other means. What I'm not okay with is her lying about us not being able to afford dinner or her wearing the same clothes for years because we apparently couldn't afford new clothes. She told me she said these things to people, and I am not going to reward that. Commenter 2. I'm sorry, is everyone here on crack? Her daughter told people she sometimes didn't have meals and also had very old or donated clothes, basically making it seem like they are so poor they can't even afford food or clothes, which is clearly not the case. OP even said, had she known sooner, she would have saved up for the trip. OP, don't listen to these people because you're NTA here. You should also have your daughter go and tell everyone that she lied, and she's not going without because honestly someone could have called CPS. Luckily, it seems that didn't happen. OP, this is definitely another issue. She told a lot of her friends' parents, and I don't know whether one of them might be considering calling CPS. I've half a mind to, I don't know, text all of them and let them know that she does not starve or have old clothes. But I don't want to embarrass her in that way. Commenter 3esh. You told her you couldn't afford it. She got mad, so you left it open-ended and then didn't follow up on it. Also, I'm not sure. Maybe if she'd made a plan with me weeks ago, is a leg you get to stand on. Do you expect your 13-year-old to be more responsible than you? You didn't follow up either after saying you would. She shouldn't have lied to people, but personally, I'm a little impressed that she got that money. I'm not saying the tactics weren't flawed, but public speaking, determination, etc. Do you know how much time it took to raise that money? You don't have to say it's okay what she did, but I actually think you'd be remiss not to channel this energy. This kid wants better for herself. Had you actually followed up with her and steered her away from lying, you could have figured something out in time. When is the next trip? Start working with her now to raise the money. She can do it. She's 13, so you obviously need to guide her and not just forget about her and her wishes completely. But she could raise that money. Also, she's not going to be able to give back the money she got from the random people on the street. If you're not going to let her keep it, then I would let her choose where to donate it. OP, this is fair. I also completely agree with your second paragraph. She has clearly shown smarts and grit, and for that I am proud of her. Honestly, that makes things worse, the fact that she chose to put that into something dishonest like this instead of something worthwhile. I wish I could have followed up with her, but unfortunately I wasn't thinking too much about it beyond saving a bit of money, just in case she was doing something too. I work long days and am quite busy, so it wasn't my first priority. Has OP's daughter missed some school trips? OP, she has missed some trips. Other trips have been cheaper, and we were able to save, especially when she told us about it months in advance. Commenter 4. Are you actually serious right now? Okay, I'll give it a shot. You didn't parent your daughter when she initially asked you. You just wanted the irritation to go away. You set no boundaries. You literally made assumptions on what she would do after intimating to the child that you are too poor to go on a trip. If that was her takeaway, you did it, not her. After her putting the time and well-intentioned effort into it, you now bother to find out what's happening. Just so you know, saving part of your paycheck doesn't make you a saint or a good parent. You should have used your big girl voice to communicate, so she repeats what you told her to other people to attempt to fix her issues herself. You get embarrassed because she repeated what you said, that you are poor, to strangers. Being poor is obviously a sin, and only bad people are poor. So your reaction is completely normal, right? Right? Press. You still offer no solution, putting the poor child back even further, and now making her understand that your word doesn't mean SHT, that you don't say what you mean, and that she must forever be embarrassed and guilty about her situation, and not talk to anyone about it or get help. Nice one. YTA. OP. Not really sure why people keep thinking she didn't lie. I already agree that I should have followed up, but I have addressed your bullet points 5-6 already in the edit and comments. I have no idea what you're even trying to say by 7. I already told her, let's make a plan, in response to 8. Commenter 5. I am going to be unpopular for it. But NTA. Yes, you should have followed up. But all parents have these, I could kick myself moments. The fact that you owned it is a positive. You are teaching your daughter that it is not okay to lie and basically steal to get what she wants. I think it's commendable that you refuse to reward her for bad behavior. You are teaching her to live within her means, and that you don't always get everything you want. Many people nowadays complain that kids are disrespectful and entitled. These are probably the same people who think it's okay for her to keep the money and go on the trip. Stick to your guns, and hopefully she will learn from it. Maybe you could discuss with her ways that she could help you save money or get a job babysitting. You could help her start a savings account for when these trips or activities come up. OP. As much as I don't want to reward her, I do want her to be able to go on the trip. I'm probably going to sell some things to scrape up the money and then have a conversation with her so that hopefully she learns and can still go on the trip. Despite what everyone here seems to think, I do love my daughter and am willing to sacrifice further. Commenter 6. So basically you're punishing your daughter because you failed as a parent. OP, call it that if you want, I guess. No wonder America's literacy rate is so low. I am not disagreeing that I should have followed up with her. However, she's almost in high school and should know to follow up herself as well, especially when it's something that's so important to her. Commenter 7. Well now, how's she supposed to know that when her parents are always at work instead of parenting her? OP, thanks for following me onto this thread, as well as multiple others. To answer your question, I simply don't see a way around it. I wish things were different, but we simply can't afford to take time off. I absolutely would love to spend more time with my daughter. In fact, almost all my free time is devoted to her. I'm not really sure why you're insinuating that I choose to work instead of being with her. Update. So I had a sit-down discussion with my daughter after work today. I thought she was still going to be upset about the whole situation, but to my surprise, she started crying and told me she was sorry. The gist of it is as follows. I'll try to be clear about it. I asked her why she hadn't just come to me to make a plan about raising money. She said she was just upset we couldn't afford it, and she admitted she should have come to me. I apologized for not following up with her and just assuming, which she acknowledged. But she also insisted she's mature and also could have come to me. I then asked her why on earth she was lying about not being able to afford food and told her that was a pretty serious thing, as someone could have called CPS on us. She started crying again and said she was sorry and that she knew it was wrong, but she just really wanted to be able to afford the trip. She begged to be able to use the money to go on the trip, but I told her that we couldn't do that, as that was scammed money. I then told her that she should give it back, but that I would sell some stuff in the home. The money I get from that plus the little bit I saved already should hopefully be enough to cover her trip. She started crying again and thanked me. We then had a discussion about the time I spend with her, and I apologized for not being able to spend as much time as I would like. She said it was okay, but I'm still going to try to figure something out. I can't afford to cut hours, but maybe something else. In the end, I hugged her and asked her if she wanted to have a mother-daughter day at the park this weekend on my day off, which she gladly accepted. I told her in the future if any situation like this ever arises, she just needs to come to me for help, and we'll figure something out. There won't be any need to lie to people to get money out of them. She agreed and apologized again. Overall, a very productive discussion. I'm just glad that she realized the lien guilting was wrong and took accountability for it. So now I'm going to do my hardest to get her on the trip. I'll even borrow money from family members if I have to. She was very receptive to what I was saying, despite some of the commenters in the last thread telling me she was going to cut contact as soon as she turned 18. Not really sure why people kept making judgments based on assumptions that were just untrue. I do not hate my daughter. My daughter does not hate me. I was not trying to punish her for telling people we couldn't afford the trip. I would have preferred if she didn't broadcast our financial situation like that. But if she had got the money from telling the truth, only that we couldn't afford the trip, I would have still let her use that money to go on the trip. I just didn't want her to go on that trip with money she got dishonestly. Anyways, I don't expect any further updates to happen, and I'm ready to consider this matter closed. Comments. Commenter 1. I can't help but wonder what the kid's point of view is. Does she think your family is poverty-stricken? Maybe she didn't think she was lying. Kids sometimes see things differently. Commenter 2. You made the financial situation her problem. You apparently told her to raise money. She sounds pretty young. Her first instinct was to lie to get others to pay for the trip. You as a parent massively F-ed up. Why is the burden on her to sit down with you and make a plan? You're the parent. You make the plan. Kids shouldn't be carrying the burden of their parents' SHTTY finances and be responsible for figuring out how to pay for school trips. YTA. Do your job as a parent. Commenter 3. YTA. Not because you refused to let her use the money, but because you completely ignored what was in front of you until it turned into a crisis. You never followed up, you never checked in, and then you acted shocked when a child tried to solve an adult problem in the wrong way. The issue is that your daughter thought she had to lie to strangers about not having food because she did not feel like she had real support or a real plan from you. Children do not go that far unless they feel cornered and unheard. You are patting yourself on the back for selling your own things to send her on the trip. But the truth is that you could have avoided the entire situation by simply being involved from the start. You left her to figure it out alone, and she made a desperate and harmful choice because of it. Yes, she lied. Yes, she needed correction. But you set the stage for the lie by refusing to engage until after the damage was done. Thank you for watching the video. If you are interested in listening to these kinds of stories, we've got more in store for you. Simply subscribe to our channel, hit the like button, and share it with your friends.